That Thursday night didn't feel like the start of anything dramatic. If anything, it felt painfully normal, one of those gray, midweek evenings where the dishes from lunch were still in the sink and the living room smelled faintly like reheated leftovers and fabric softener. I'd just come back from the gym, still in my hoodie, when I heard the front door click open. Jenna stepped inside, looking like she was trying not to look rushed. She wasn't usually late, not like this. Her work rarely demanded it. She managed brand partnerships for an online clothing store, the kind that loved remote meetings and async culture. She didn't have to punch a clock, and most days she wrapped up by 5. So when she walked in closer to 7, already kicking off her shoes and pulling off her jacket with practiced ease, my brain clocked it as unusual. "Hey," I called from the hallway, pretending like I'd just noticed. "Late day?" She glanced over her shoulder. "Yeah. Long one." I stepped closer, instinctively scanning her face. Her smile was there, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Her lipstick looked freshly reapplied, too fresh for someone who just spent all day behind a screen. But it wasn't until I heard the buzz of her phone and saw the way she jammed it into her coat pocket that my pulse kicked up a notch. A glimpse. Just one name. Alex Courses. And that was the moment I knew something didn't fit. Jenna hadn't mentioned any courses in at least 6 months. She tried to get into UX design for a while, took some night classes, followed some YouTube tutorials, but then life got busy. It fizzled. Quietly. Naturally. Yet here he was, Alex. From the courses. Still calling her. She didn't comment on the phone. Didn't look at it again. Instead, she beamed at me with this overly bright grin and said, "You know what I was thinking on the way home? We should switch roles for a week." I blinked. Switch roles? She nodded enthusiastically, walking past me toward the kitchen as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "Yeah. Like? I take over your work stuff, you take over the house. Full trade. No shortcuts. I want to feel what your days are like, see what it's like being you for a while. Equal partners, right?" I followed her slowly. "Where's this coming from?" She opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of oat milk, and shrugged. "I don't know. Just thinking. We've both been in our routines for so long. I feel like maybe we've fallen into patterns. You're always working. I'm always picking up groceries or handling laundry. Thought it'd be interesting to shake things up. Fairer division of labor and all." There it was. The word. Fair. Jenna had been dropping that word more often lately. Fair this equal that. And sure, I believed in that stuff. We always tried to split things down the middle. But the way she was pitching this tonight, with that rushed energy, that breathless eagerness, it didn't feel organic. It felt like cover. She poured herself a glass, leaned against the counter, and sipped without meeting my eyes. I leaned on the opposite side, arms folded, just watching her. "You've never said you felt things were unfair," I said quietly. "Well, maybe I didn't realize it until now," she replied too quickly. "I've been doing some reading lately. About gender roles, emotional labor. Invisible stuff. And it got me thinking. Maybe we're not as balanced as we think." My first instinct was to roll my eyes. Not because I didn't care about that stuff, but because I knew Jenna. When she was genuinely passionate about something, she brought it up gradually, talked about it over dinner, asked what I thought. She didn't drop it like a bombshell after a suspiciously long day and a phone call from someone who supposedly belonged to a part of her life that was long dormant. She was trying to frame something. "I mean, I get that," I said carefully. "I'm all for checking in on the balance. But this is kind of sudden." She tilted her head. "Sudden doesn't mean wrong. Think of it like an experiment. We trade lives. For 7 days. You'll finally see how many errands I run, how often the little things pile up. And I'll finally get to see what your work is really like." I let that sink in. In her voice, I heard 2 things. First, the usual high ground logic she used when she wanted to win an argument without actually having one. Second, and this was new, guilt. The kind of guilt that gets wrapped in ideas to make it feel noble. Righteous, even? I gave a slow nod. "Okay. Let's do it." She looked surprised. "Not a lot, but enough for me to notice." "Really?" "Sure. I mean, like you said, could be interesting." And just like that, the stage was set. We agreed that the switch would start Monday. I'd step away from my work responsibilities, temporarily delegate what I could, pause what I couldn't, and Jenna would take the reins. I'd handle her side of things, emails to the supplier, schedule coordination, keeping the household running. From the outside, it probably looked like a cute experiment between an ambitious couple trying to better understand each other. But behind my agreement was a very different motive. You see, I wasn't just suspicious. I was ready. Ready to get answers. To follow my instincts instead of suppressing them like I had for months. This switch? It was a chance. A window. Jenna thought she was buying herself time, space, maybe even a clean conscience. But all she'd done was hand me the perfect reason to start looking more closely. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that people rarely volunteer to shake up a perfectly stable routine unless they're trying to distract from something else. And Jenna? She was hiding something. I could feel it in my gut. And starting Monday, I was going to find out exactly what it was. The strangest thing about betrayal isn't the moment you uncover it, it's the weeks, even months, leading up to it. The quiet whispers in your gut you don't listen to. The little details you excuse away because it's easier to believe in love than to confront the possibility that it's slipping through your fingers. After Jenna proposed the role swap, I started seeing everything differently, not just the days ahead, but the days behind. It's like once the suspicion was allowed to breathe, it filled every corner of my memory. That weekend before the switch, I couldn't stop playing things back in my head. Moments that had seemed trivial now took on a new weight. Conversations, glances, patterns, all of it suddenly begged for reevaluation. First, there was the work thing. Jenna had always prided herself on her predictability. She loved structure almost to a fault. Her work schedule had been stable for the better part of 3 years, and yet, for the last month or two, she'd started staying out later, claiming last-minute meetings or collaborations with suppliers. I wanted to believe her at first, even admired the sudden surge in professional drive. But here's the thing, her company didn't do in-person meetings anymore. Not since the pandemic. They'd even shut down their downtown office 6 months ago and transitioned everyone to remote or hybrid. So where was she going? The first time I asked, she gave me this offhand explanation about a pop-up vendor trying to break into the site's affiliate program. Local artists, she said, breezing past me while changing out of her boots. They want to pitch a whole collection, scarves, candles, that kind of thing. I'm just meeting them for coffee. It sounded reasonable, believable. And she said it like someone who'd already practiced the sentence in her head. Still, I bought it. At the time, I had no reason not to. Then there was the phone behavior. It started gradually, the screen always facing down, even during casual dinners. She used to leave her phone lying around everywhere, on the kitchen counter, next to the sink, even in the bathroom when she was getting ready. But over the last month, it might as well have been glued to her. I caught her more than once jumping at the sound of a notification only to quickly swipe it away like she'd been electrocuted. I'd ask who it was and she'd say just spam or work stuff. I began to notice the time of the notifications. Midnight, 1:20 a.m. One time, 3:12 a.m. European suppliers, she'd say, yawning as if the logic was so clear I was a fool for asking. Time zones, babe. Only she didn't work with anyone in Europe. Not that I'd ever heard of. Even her excuses started changing subtly like a script being rewritten mid-performance. One day she'd mention Sandra from the Sweden team and 2 weeks later it was Lena from Portugal. I never questioned it. Why would I? I wanted to trust her. But now, looking back, it was like watching a magician's sleight of hand, the way she dangled work talk to distract me from the truth happening right under my nose. Then there was that trip. It was late March, about 2 weeks before she proposed the switch. She told me she was heading out of town to visit a friend who'd just had surgery, some college roommate I barely remembered. At the time, I offered to go with her, drive her even, but she said she needed girl time. Said it was a private thing, emotional, and she didn't want me to feel out of place. I stayed behind. The day she left, she called me from the road and I heard laughter in the background, a man's voice. Just for a second. Then it cut off. I asked about it. She told me it was the radio. Here's the kicker, that same day was the birthday of her old classmate, Alex, the same Alex she once mentioned years ago during a story about her UX course. He was smart, charming, and a little too eager, she'd said. But harmless. Back then, I felt a flicker of discomfort. Not jealousy, just alertness. But she told me I had nothing to worry about, that Alex was married and lived in another city. That trip, I saw on her social media. Buried in a tagged story she probably forgot to hide from me. A snapsh asterisk T of a wine glass, captioned, "To unexpected reunions." I recognized the bar. It wasn't anywhere near her friend's house. It was in the city where Alex lived. And still, I told myself it was coincidence. We gaslight ourselves more than anyone else ever could. In the days leading up to the switch, Jenna had also started talking about emotional labor. That phrase. She said it so often it started to feel like a sermon. "I just feel like you don't see how much I do to keep us afloat," she'd say. "Do you mean chores?" "No," she'd say, tilting her head like I was missing the obvious. "I mean the stuff you don't notice. Planning, anticipating, thinking ahead, emotional weight. I didn't argue. I knew better than to turn it into a debate. But I started paying attention. Who set the budget every month? Who reviewed our insurance policies, tracked our investments, ran the numbers for the house refinance? Who fixed the water heater when it broke? Who talked Jenna through her panic when her boss threatened to cut her hours last year? I wasn't trying to score points. I just didn't like the way she nized the concept. Like she was building a case against me in a court I didn't know I was being tried in. But now, knowing what I know or suspect, I think it was projection. She wanted to justify a distance she already felt. Or maybe a guilt she already carried. Because here's what finally snapped things into place for me. Her demeanor. Jenna was a confident woman, but lately, she'd started acting too careful around me. Polished, scripted, like she was trying to keep a story straight in her head. The spontaneous spark I'd always loved about her had dimmed, replaced by this performative empathy. Everything was conscious and intentional and respectful of our energies. And yet, I felt like she wasn't really here with me anymore. It was like living with someone who had already packed their bags emotionally, but was still showing up for breakfast. And when she made that role swap offer so suddenly, so theatrically, it felt like a chess move, not a gesture of love, a distraction. But the irony? She had no idea she just handed me the perfect opportunity to step out of her shadow and into the light where truth lives. The countdown had started. 7 days. 1 week where she'd wear my responsibilities like a borrowed coat, and I'd get full view of her world. The texts, the calls, the movements, the cracks in the foundation. She wanted fairness? Then I'd give her what she asked for. Not revenge, just clarity. Because I wasn't paranoid. I was finally paying attention. And this time I wouldn't look away. It happened on day 2. Not day 5, not 6, day 2. I wasn't expecting answers that fast. I thought maybe I'd have to dig. Sit through a week of pretending to care about product descriptions and supplier invoices. Smile while Jenna overdramatized the weight of managing my schedule. But the truth didn't wait for subtlety. It blew the door wide open. And all I had to do was stand still long enough to let it hit me. The morning started off normal enough. If you can call sitting at her desk in yoga pants, emailing back and forth about faux leather jackets, normal. I spent the first half of the day fielding basic logistics with a supplier named Melinda, while Jenna, playing the role of me, headed out to meet a client on my behalf. I briefed her as best I could, even printed some mock spreadsheets for her to reference in case she blanked. To her credit, she looked confident when she left. Business casual blazer, glasses she hadn't worn in months, a reusable coffee cup in one hand and my old messenger bag slung over her shoulder. The part of me that once admired her style still noticed the way she pulled it all together. Polished, controlled. I stayed behind, stuck in her world. Around 11:30 a.m., I got a call from one of my clients, Rob. He wanted to reschedule next week's proposal meeting. I scribbled down a new time, checked Jenna's calendar, and figured I'd go grab a sandwich after replying to him. I left my phone upstairs on the kitchen counter next to hers. Something she used to do all the time, back when there was no reason to keep it within reach like a loaded P***N. When I came back half an hour later, I noticed the screen lit up. First, I thought it was mine. But it wasn't. It was hers. And what caught my eye wasn't the name. It was the way her phone buzzed twice. Then once more just as I reached the counter. 3 notifications. Same sender. Alex, courses. I shouldn't have looked. But let's be honest, that ship had sailed a long time ago. I picked it up. The first thing I saw was the preview of a message that made my stomach clench. Last night was amazing. I never expected you'd actually go through with it. Shall we repeat? My vision tunneled. My thumb hovered just above the screen. For a second, I hesitated, part of me still hoping there was some ridiculous, improbable explanation. Maybe it wasn't that Alex. Maybe it was an inside joke. Maybe he was talking about a dinner. A movie. Something innocuous. Then the second message came in. Got your note. Room still booked until 2. No pressure. Just say the word. I didn't need the third one. I was already shaking. A cold numbness spread from my chest to my fingers like my body had just unplugged itself from belief. The floor might as well have tilted. I couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. It was real. She'd cheated. Right under my nose. I locked the phone without opening anything else. It was enough. More than enough. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter to steady myself. My eyes drifted to the clock, 12:17 p.m. She wouldn't be home for hours. I paced the hallway once, twice, then went back to her laptop, hoping, maybe stupidly, that it would refute what I just saw. Instead, it confirmed it. An email notification pinged at the top of the screen. She was still logged in. Subject line, your Bloom order is on its way. Bloom. A flower delivery service. We used it for our anniversary last year. Curious or masochistic, I opened the confirmation. Recipient, the Glass Fern Hotel. Room 215. Delivery time, 11:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. Message, couldn't stop thinking about you. Until next time. Jay. That hotel was clear across town. I'd driven past it maybe once in my life. Boutique, upscale, the kind of place that advertised things like urban luxury and hidden indulgence in their marketing blurbs. There was no denying it anymore. The late nights. The courses. The spontaneous feminism. The need to reclaim her voice. It had all been window dressing. A smokescreen. A beautifully packaged lie. This role swap she pushed on me, it hadn't been about equality. It had been about creating cover. By offering to step into my shoes, she gave herself room to step out of the life we built together. I stared at her computer, feeling the room spin. Anger hadn't fully kicked in yet. Shock had taken the lead. Not just at what she did, but how easily, how methodically she'd pulled it off. This wasn't a single night. It was a strategy. I sat down, trying to calm my breathing. My pulse was all over the place, my hands trembling in my lap. My wife had cheated on me, while telling me she wanted to understand me better, while pretending she cared about our dynamic. She hadn't just crossed a line, she danced on it. And now? Now I had the receipts. I stood up, walked to the fridge, and poured myself a glass of water. I needed to think. Not react. Not scream. I needed to plan. Jenna thought she was running this narrative that she'd cleverly disguised an affair behind noble intent. But what she didn't know was that I'd seen behind the curtain. And I had 5 more days to watch the whole thing unravel. She came home around 5, still in character, wearing that same smug mask of efficiency. How'd it go? I asked, keeping my voice level. She gave me a tired smile, as if she had been the one juggling emails and calendars. I'm exhausted. Your clients are intense. You get used to it. She flopped onto the couch, kicking her shoes off, reaching for the remote like she'd just returned from battle. I watched her closely. The way she moved. The subtle grin tugging at her lips when she thought I wasn't looking. And I knew. She felt untouchable. But the thing about masks is they always slip eventually. The morning after I read the messages, the ones from Alex, the bouquet confirmation, the room number, I didn't confront Jenna. I didn't yell, didn't pack a bag, didn't storm out. I got up like nothing had happened, shaved, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with her work laptop open like a devoted participant in her little experiment. She came downstairs 20 minutes later, hair still damp from the shower, moving a bit slower than usual. I wondered if she'd been out late again. I didn't ask. I just looked up, smiled like everything was fine, and said, "You ready for day 3? She blinked, surprised. Yeah. Definitely. The guilt wasn't there, not visibly. No lingering looks. No hesitation. Just another performance. And now I knew her lines before she spoke them. I handed her a folder with notes I'd printed for the day's meetings. Her eyes widened slightly. You made an agenda? I nodded. Thought it might help. You said you wanted the full experience. She forced a laugh and took the folder, thumbing through the pages. Wow, you're really organized. You have no idea, I thought. The day before, I'd caught her lying to my face. I'd seen it in black and white messages and tracking emails. And still, I'd said nothing. That restraint wasn't easy. Every fiber in me wanted to scream, to hold the phone in her face and ask her how long she'd been looking me in the eye while slipping out of my life behind my back. But I didn't, because now I had a better idea. Let her play the part. Let her feel the weight of what I do, day in and day out. Let her see the hours, the pressure, the constant juggling, and the responsibility she never truly noticed. Maybe she thought all I did was sit behind a desk, send emails, and call it a day. Maybe she thought I was coasting while she bore the real weight of the relationship. So fine, let's test that. I leaned into her little role reversal fantasy, but now I was the one calling the sh*TS. I became the quiet observer, watching as she slowly unraveled under the very structure she thought she could imitate. By noon that day, She was texting me from her car. Running 10 minutes late. Client changed the location. Trying to find parking. She wasn't late. She'd misread the meeting time. I knew it because I deliberately listed it an hour earlier in her notes. Her first crack. Just a hairline fracture. By 3 p.m., another message. Ugh, your coworker Leo talks so much. I think I nodded through half of it. I smiled at that one. Leo doesn't talk much, but he's sharp and he doesn't miss details. I wondered if he'd sensed something was off. If he'd noticed the nervous energy behind her fake confidence. At 5, she returned home and dropped her bag on the floor like it weighed 100 pounds. Do you seriously do this every day? She asked, heading for the fridge without waiting for an answer. I shrugged. More or less. She poured herself a glass of wine and plopped onto the couch, eyes half closed. I'm not used to this kind of stress. I almost replied, yeah, you've been more of a hotel stress kind of person lately. But I bit my tongue. Instead, I sat beside her, pulled out her tablet, and casually asked if she wanted to go over some of her remaining work tasks, just to stay even. The look she gave me was priceless. Tired, frustrated, confused. You're seriously still going? She asked. I mean, yeah, you said 7 days. She didn't argue, just sighed and leaned her head back against the cushion, muttering something about capitalism and burnout. That night, I slept lightly, mind racing with quiet satisfaction and white-hot fury. She had no idea I knew. No clue that every word she said to me now was being filtered through the lens of betrayal. The worst part wasn't the cheating. It was the performance that followed. The eagerness to teach me about balance, shared labor, and fairness, while she was actively hiding something from me. I realized it wasn't about equality for her. It was about distraction, control. This wasn't her experiment anymore. It was mine, and she was the one under observation now. By day 4, I stopped offering to help her navigate my work. I still gave her access, sure, but no more tips, no shortcuts. I wanted her to feel what it was like to be overwhelmed, to drown in details no one else sees but you. The kind that keep you up at night because you know if you drop the ball, no one else is there to catch it. She missed a calendar sync with a vendor and double-booked herself. She forgot to send out a document that needed a signature by noon and didn't realize it until 4 p.m. She told me she hadn't eaten all day because she just couldn't find the time, and I didn't comfort her. I didn't say, it's okay, or you'll get the hang of it. I just said, yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? And let her sit with that. The only time I almost broke was when I caught her texting again. At night, while I was brushing my teeth. Her phone lit up twice in 30 seconds. The first message was from someone labeled M. The second came from A work. She was standing in the hallway, slightly hunched, phone close to her chest like she didn't want me to see. Her thumbs moved quickly. She glanced toward the bathroom, didn't see me watching, and kept typing. That was when I felt it again, that sharp, almost electric pain in my ribs. It wasn't heartbreak. It was recognition. The person I married wouldn't have hidden like that. Wouldn't have whispered her lies behind contact names like work and courses. This version of Jenna wasn't someone I loved anymore. She was someone I was studying. By day 5, she asked, half joking, half serious, is there a way we can cut this short? I looked at her over my laptop screen and raised an eyebrow. You're the one who said a full week. She chuckled weakly. Yeah, well, I may have overestimated myself. I leaned back in the chair and stared at her. Really stared. She looked worn out. The same woman who used to talk about personal alignment and mental clarity now sat across from me, face tight with stress, eyes twitching toward her phone every 5 minutes like it held oxygen. Good. Let her sweat. Let her squirm. Because this wasn't just about catching her anymore. It was about showing her, without a single raised voice, what it felt like to carry the weight of a relationship while your partner drifts off into a fantasy built on lies and unspoken exits. I was done trying to prove myself to her. Now it was her turn to stand in my shoes. And the longer she wore them, the harder it became for her to walk straight. By the third morning of our role reversal, Jenna's energy had dropped like a stone in a well. She wasn't bouncing downstairs anymore. No quick kisses, no little affirmations about pushing ourselves to grow. Her pep had drained out somewhere between my Monday morning logistics spreadsheet and Tuesday's back-to-back client check-ins. When she walked into the kitchen that morning, her hair was still wet and her shirt was wrinkled. No makeup. No phone in hand. Just her, standing there with this vacant expression that said more than she ever would out loud. I handed her the updated client list without saying a word. She took it with a barely audible thanks. 10 minutes later, she spilled coffee all over the agenda. She didn't apologize. I didn't comment. The emotional shift was almost surreal. 2 days ago, she'd been riding high on a cloud of purpose, making speeches about empathy and role equity, explaining how eye-opening this experiment would be for both of us. Now she looked like someone who had been dropped into a foreign country with no map and expected to lead a tour group. And still, I said nothing about Alex. Nothing about the texts. Nothing about the bouquet she sent to a boutique hotel while I made her morning oatmeal. Because this was no longer about confrontation. This was a controlled collapse. Every mistake she made, every missed call, every forgotten email chipped away at the version of herself she tried so hard to project. Not just to me, but to herself. That version, the one that believed she was underappreciated, unfairly burdened, was now colliding headfirst with reality. And I was watching it happen. That afternoon, I deliberately sent her to one of my more high-maintenance clients, the kind who emails in bullet points and expects immediate action. I told her to present the revised numbers and walk him through the quarterly projections. She nodded like she understood, but I could already see the panic behind her eyes. While she was gone, I cleaned the kitchen, checked her shared calendar, and reviewed her Slack history. Nothing stood out immediately, at least nothing new. But the pattern continued. Repeated messages to Alex disguised under project talk, a few suspiciously timed calendar blocks labeled creative planning or solo strategy. Her entire digital footprint had been scrubbed to make the affair look like ambition. Clever if it weren't so obvious. Around 4 p.m. she came back home. She didn't say a word at first. Just dropped her bag, walked to the couch, and sat there, slumped, arms dangling like she couldn't hold herself up anymore. I blew it, she said finally. I looked up from her laptop. What happened? I forgot half of what you told me. I was supposed to explain the new contract terms, but I mixed them up. He asked me 3 times to clarify, and I blanked. Completely. I nodded slowly, offering nothing. Let her speak. I didn't realize how many little things go into what you do, she muttered. It's like your brain never shuts off. Still, I said nothing. She stared at the ceiling for a moment, then turned her head toward me. I don't think I can do this, she whispered. There it was. The crack became a break. Her face, which had been tight with determination the last few days, softened into something I hadn't seen in a while: vulnerability. Real vulnerability, not the performative kind she pulled out when she wanted to score points in an argument. I feel like I'm drowning, she said. Every time I think I've caught up, something else slips. The calls, the numbers, the way people expect you to know what you're doing even when you're barely hanging on. Still, I didn't reach out. I didn't say, see? Now you get it. I didn't comfort her or rub her back or offer her an out. Because she wasn't drowning in my work. She was drowning in guilt. This had never been about workload. This had been about escape. Jenna had used the language of fairness to mask her real intent, to buy time and space to live a double life. She told herself a version of the truth that sounded noble, that our relationship was unbalanced, that she needed to reset the scales. But the real scale was guilt. And it was finally tipping. I didn't realize how much you hold together, she continued, voice cracking. It's not just the work, it's the pressure. The expectation. Everything just piles up. She turned her face away and I could hear her exhale slowly through her nose. Not quite crying. But close. I used to think you were distracted on purpose, she said quietly. When you'd say you were working late, I thought you were just avoiding me. That one stung a little, but I didn't let it show. I didn't know you were building all this for us. I thought you were just elsewhere. I closed the laptop, folded my hands in front of me, let the silence stretch. Then finally I said, and why did you want to do this again? She paused. I wanted to prove something, she admitted. To myself. Maybe to you. I don't even know anymore. I nodded once, slowly. She looked at me then. Really looked. Like she was trying to read my thoughts, to guess how much I'd figured out. And for the first time I saw fear in her expression. Not panic. Not terror. But the kind of quiet fear that comes from realizing the person sitting across from you isn't playing along anymore. She knew something was different now. The dynamic had shifted. I was no longer reacting. I was listening. Processing. Calculating. That scared her more than yelling ever could. After a long silence, she stood and walked upstairs without saying another word. I didn't follow. Instead, I sat there in the quiet, surrounded by her half-finished tasks, her unpaid invoices, her blinking notifications. This was her mess now, and she was finally starting to feel it. Later that night, while she was in the shower, I walked into the guest room and retrieved the printout of her hotel receipt. It was still folded in the back of her purse. I placed it on the coffee table along with the phone number from the flower order and a sticky note that read, "You left this in your bag. Figured you might need it. No accusations. No threats. Just a breadcrumb." Let her wonder how much I knew. Let the weight of it press against her like a vice. She wanted to switch places. Now she could live in mine, where silence said more than shouting ever could. By day 6, Jenna wasn't trying anymore. She moved slower, spoke softer. Her usual assertiveness was gone, replaced by cautious glances and quiet half-apologies. The woman who once told me I was lucky not to deal with domestic mental load now sat at our dining table, staring at spreadsheets like they were written in code. I didn't have to say anything. Her silence was doing the work. That morning, I had her review our long-term financial planning folder, something I'd been handling alone for years. Mortgages, taxes, investment accounts, projections for the future. She looked overwhelmed within minutes. "You've been doing all this by yourself?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. The look on her face wasn't just confusion, it was shame. For the first time, I could tell she saw it clearly. While she posted about empowerment, I'd been protecting our future, piece by piece, in the quiet hours after work. She thought I was just working late. She never noticed I was building us a life. I didn't mention the hotel. I didn't bring up Alex. I just let the numbers speak for themselves. Because her awakening, this slow, painful unraveling of the narrative she'd built, was worth more than any accusation. On the 7th night, Jenna came to me. Not with another theory. Not with spin. She sat down across from me, eyes tired, voice small. "I was wrong," she said. "About a lot of things." I didn't speak. I let her fill the silence. "I thought you were checked out. I thought I was doing everything alone. But I wasn't. I just wasn't paying attention." She looked like she wanted me to forgive her just for saying that. But I wasn't here for redemption. I reached into the drawer and placed her phone on the table. One tap, one swipe. The message lit up. "Last night was amazing. Shall we repeat?" Her face went pale. Mouth parted slightly, but no words came. "You wanted the truth," I said calmly. "Now you have it. No shouting. No dramatic exit. Just reality." She sat in stunned silence, the experiment she built collapsing under the weight of her own choices. "You couldn't last a week in my shoes," I added. "But you managed to lie to my face the whole time." She looked up at me, tears welling, but I was already standing. "The roles are changing now," I said. "Just not the way you imagined." And I walked out. Because I didn't need to catch her anymore. I needed to free myself.